So let's talk about a drowning smile. So the idea for a drowning smile conceptually came to me a few weeks or even a month or two into the pandemic lockdown in the UK. I think it was that moment when I realized that even despite all the bad stuff that the pandemic had brought with it, this sense of a lack of pressure or this sense of almost time standing still was actually something that some days I genuinely enjoyed, and then I'd feel guilty about enjoying it, and then I'd feel worried about the extension of that situation. But then it hit me that actually I feared what would come next a lot more than the extension of that whole situation, because I just had this realization that the worst thing that could happen would be to go back to the old normal, because things weren't really working that well then for the world. And I started to sort of flip back and forth between having hope for the future because people saw that we needed a change, versus the idea that people would just want things to go back to normal. And I started seeing parallels between those times where you're quite low mentally, and somehow the idea of staying in that comfort zone of misery, to use the same term as I use in the song, somehow that comfort zone becomes more appealing than putting in the effort to change, because the certainty of that stagnation becomes a layer of comfort and security, whereas the uncertainty of change is something to be feared. And now, in most areas of my life, it's the other way around. I seek out change, I go for that differentiation and try to do things my own way. But somehow, during periods of that lockdown, I felt myself going from really worried about the future or even the present over to feeling like I was like a kid on a summer holiday, just being able to do whatever I wanted within boundaries. Like, I wasn't going out partying or anything, but waking up when I wanted to, playing video games, but then I'd feel guilty about enjoying it and the cycle would start all over again. And seeing those parallels between mental struggles and what the whole world was going through, and this, I guess, communal grief over what had been lost, was a really interesting theme for me to explore. And there's probably a lot more to explore within it, but I thought I'd be silly not to include something about this whole experience on the album. And seeing as the whole thing is all about finding empathy in a world that doesn't care, finding passion in things that are a little bit different, I felt like it fit perfectly in with this idea of needing a new normal, of stepping outside of those norms and kind of expanding on that idea. And musically, it happened along the same timeline, but I guess was stretched out a little bit further in terms of I started writing it during the lockdown and then kept adding to it, and then left the song for a while and came back to it. But then actually conceptually came first, then music, but I didn't actually finish the lyrics and vocals until very late in the album process, where it was one of the first songs finished on a musical level and conceptual level. But I literally finished writing the lyrics standing in front of the microphone recording it. So there the song probably took the longest out of all the songs on the album, but I'm really happy with how it came out. So if you're watching this video and you haven't heard it, I'll leave a link to the song in the comments. And if you really want to hear more of the album, I'll also leave a link to pre-save the album on Spotify as well as Bandcamp, so you can check out the all 3 singles that are already out, as well as everything else when it comes out in a couple weeks.